or ornithology, composting, vermicomposting, environmental education, establishing outdoor classrooms and wildlife gardens, and educating the public about the wonders of monarchs. Tricia has a bachelor's degree in biology and a master's in science education with an emphasis in animal behavior. Tricia is past president and co-president of Monarchs Across Georgia and also serves as the head of the Pollinator Habitat Certification Committee. She's been actively working to educate the citizens of Georgia about monarch ecology and biology for over 20 years through classes, workshops, and public talks. Tricia also offers tours to the monarch overwintering colonies in Mexico. Upon retirement, she realized that her depth of knowledge offered an opportunity to help homeowners transition from a traditional lawn yard to a landscape that welcomes wildlife and pollinators with native plants. This type of landscape is critical in protecting threatened species and establishing a healthy ecosystem for humans and wildlife. Please welcome our speaker, Tricia Neal.
Well, now I gotta turn it back on. There we go. Okay. I think I'm on. We'll see how the feedback goes. Does it normally do between these two? No. Somebody's working on it. I'm gonna turn it off and just bellow for a little while. Thank you for having me back. Gosh, I was just trying to remember on the way over here when I was here last, and I think it was 2 years ago, and I have to congratulate this group because this consistently is the largest group that I have to come out to hear these kind of talks, and particularly in an evening. Yes, you should give yourselves a round of applause. Particularly in the evenings when we all have so many other things that really need our important time and attention. Turn it back on? Let's try. Okay, let's see how that goes. Better. You're going to stand there, right? Okay, good. That way. Oh. Almost. Okay. I'm going to turn it back off for a minute. We'll get there. So where was I? Glad to be here. Thank you. Largest group, yes, and that you are a backyard association. That is, y'all are the only group I know of with that title, and I just think it's wonderful that there are so many people here that are interested in the health and what they can do in their backyards. Maybe I'd do better with that hand mic, just the hand mic, and we'll just take that one off.
Are you okay holding that?
Oh no, I'm terrible at it. But okay, we'll try that one. Is that better? And I am not used to standing up here and holding the mic, so it'll probably do this a lot, okay? But I'll do my best, okay? Thank you for the nice introduction. I always wonder who that is when they finish reading it, because it's like, oh, that can't be me, because that would mean I'm old, and I'm not, right? But I have been around, been doing this for a long time. I used to always joke, it's really not a joke, I was diagnosed with ADD at the age of 62, which explains a lot about my career, because I'm one of those people that just really dives into something and I want to learn as much as I can about it, and then it's like, okay, I'm on to the next. Luckily, when I retired, I found out that all those things went together amazingly and made it so that I was able to start this business when I retired, designing landscapes for people using only native plants. And I've been doing that since the end of 2017. And I luckily can tell you I am so busy that I don't even know what I'm doing half the time, because everybody's interested. But out of self-defense, and I'll tell you more about this at the end, I ended up having to start a nursery also 2 years ago, so I'll let y'all know more. So somewhere in the last couple, it's been a rough 5 years. I think we can all say that, right? Doesn't matter where you are on the political spectrum between politics and COVID and everything that has just been happening in our world. The last 5 or 6 have been kind of rough, and they've caused me to do a lot of introspection about where I am at this point in my life. Can y'all still? Okay, gotcha. Where I am at this point in my life, what does my life mean? What do I need to be doing with my life? All of those kinds of things. And one of the topics that really struck me was connection, human connection, because it seems like we are really, really missing that element in our society right now. So I wrote this program. It's called Searching for Connection, Why Humans Need Nature. And y'all are just the second group I've given it to. So I'm really excited that y'all chose this topic. You know, I don't think it comes as a surprise to any of you because you're here that being in nature is important. It's critical. But what I want to do tonight is to show you the science behind it, because there is so much new science that's out that's giving us the data to support these things that we've all just kind of intuitively known. So it probably will be a long and winding road tonight as we're making our way through all of this. But this is me, okay? Pie chart of my life. Most of it is buying plants. You can see that there's some planting. However, that really should have my husband's name on it because he's the one that's doing all the planting. Lots of reading, lots of talking about, lots of talking to my plants. I go out there every day and say, come on guys, you can do it. And then a little tiny sliver of other, which is really probably the laundry and the cooking and all those things I hate to do, but luckily my sweetheart is very, very patient. And I won't say he doesn't mind, but he doesn't say anything after 37 years. He knows it won't do. So that's not me in the picture, but it might as well could have been. That's probably where you'd find me as a child, would be out in the mud, out in the dirt. My poor mother, I was adopted. Both of my parents were professional musicians, and my mom wanted a little frilly girl. She wanted the pink dresses, the bows in the hair, all of that, and she got me, bless her. You know, they say our lessons come to us when we need them, right? And I'm sure I was a trial lesson for her. But I just wanted to be outside. I didn't know why. It was just where I felt the best, right? So the question I kind of started this whole presentation with was, are we actually wired for connection? I've been studying evolution my entire career, and you know, there's just some things in us that we have evolved over these thousands and thousands of years behaviorally. And if you look in the literature, you will find, I venture to say, hundreds of titles about us being physiologically wired to connect. This is just 2 of them, okay? So really quickly, I want to just go over in the literature, what are the kinds of connection that we have? Because believe it or not, there's quite a few. So the first one is called a micro-connection. And a micro-connection is the connection kind of we're having. It's with a stranger, you nod, you smile, you know. You don't know them, but you do have a moment to connect, right? And the second one is this self-connection. So self-connection is when you're in touch with who you are as a person, your worthiness as a person, and you know that. You know, you'd think everybody knew that, but you believe it or not, there are a lot of people that have no clue how they feel about themselves as a person. And then intimate connection, of course, these are the people that are closest to us in our lives, our spouses, our friends that we spend a lot of time with. And then we have what are relational connections, which is just this whole social fabric. So like you guys are a relational connection. And then the collective is the collective connection that we have with, let's say, all the master gardeners. So you share a a similar hobby or a passion, right? So these are the 5 types that you would see in the literature. I'm proposing a 6th type, and I want to call it the nature connection, because I feel like this connection has really been missed, particularly in the psychological literature, as a need, even though we are learning more about it. So, do we need nature, right? Well, what kind of benefits do we get? And again, these are all new studies that have come out, let's say in the last maybe 15 or 20 years that tell us. So, as a young child of the 70s, I can tell you one of the health benefits I won't say me, might have asked, but someone in the 70s might have said, can you get high from being outside? Okay? The short answer is yes, okay? You can. Because just the simple act of being outside is putting your senses in touch with chemicals that are causing our chemicals to go up. So these are our feel-good, these are our happy hormones. So dopamine and serotonin, they've measured this in the blood levels of people, and they are much higher in people that have been outside than in people that have not. How long does it take to get high outside, right? 2 hours, that's all, to see a rise in blood levels, right? So they studied these 20,000 people. Now that's a lot of people to study, right? This is at the University of Exeter, and they found that people who spent just 2 hours a week, that's not a day, okay? It's just a week outside in some sort of green space. They could do it all at once. Like, I just have 2 hours this afternoon, I'll go out and sit in the park. Or it could have been spaced out over time. So I've got 15 minutes today, maybe 30 tomorrow, right? But what they found was that these people substantially, this is statistically significant, had better health and better psychological well-being. And this was true regardless, of their occupation, so it didn't matter their educational level, their ethnic group, or their economics. So it's true across the board. That's pretty startling in a scientific study when you can get something that's true across all those different types of populations that you're studying, and or if they had a chronic illness or a disability. So it didn't matter if someone was dealing with something like cancer or a mobility disability, they still felt all of those things, okay? So this is a book. I think I recommended this last time I was here. I'm still recommending it. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend. It's by Richard Louv. It's called Last Child in the Woods. He is not a scientist. He was a reporter. He was just traveling around the country interviewing people just like you guys at meetings like this for topics that he thought would be good to report on. This was about 20 years ago, and he kept hearing over and over and over again, my kids won't go outside. I cannot get them off the computer. I can't get them off the Game Boy, right? And so he started researching it, and he came up with this term that he calls the nature deficit disorder. Because what he found was that in children who do not go outside or, and they're just tied to their electronics, the rates of ADHD were significantly higher. Now there's no, it could be just a correlation. It could be causal. We don't really know yet, but we're starting to find some of that data is getting teased out. And what he said was this subject was ignored by everybody in the academic world, okay? He could only find 60 studies that had some good data, scientific data. Today, we're passing over 1,000 studies. I would say we're probably well past that, okay? And every single one of them says nature's not only nice to have, but it is a have to have, okay? It's not negotiable. It is something we have got to take care of and deal with. So what does it do? Well, lowers your blood pressure. If you're like me, your blood pressure is creeping up. We're all getting older. The more we can do to lower our blood pressure, the better, okay? Cortisol. Cortisol is a hormone in your body that's responsible for stress. So those of us that have high stress levels, we're going to have way higher cortisol levels. And that leads to pain and inflammation, okay? So they found that people that are going outside, their cortisol levels are lowering. Just the whole nervous system is better regulated. You know, there's a lot going on in your nervous system. And I would love to give you a lecture on it because it's fascinating. But just know that depending on where you are in your nervous system is where you are with your cortisol levels, okay? So we like to get that regulated. And then just our immune systems are better when we're spending time outside. And then I love this one, okay? Farmer Joe's Gym and Tanning, get the workout of your life. Membership zero. Open 24 hours, pull weeds, dig holes, state-of-the-art open air tanning, right? So that's how we sell it to our young people, right? We're gonna go to the gym, which is just happens to be outside. But it is true, all of that, right? So, physical benefits, we just talked about. What are some mental benefits? Well, studies have showed that it really helps you with your self-esteem, helps you calm yourself and reduce anxiety. Goodness knows we need anything that can help us lower our anxiety levels these days. And it just, in general, improves your mood. This was one I was kind of surprised by, is that the studies they did with children with ADHD is that they found that the simple act of going outside, spending 15 to 30 minutes, not doing anything special, just being out there, that sense of overwhelm that we get, any of you fellow ADHDers, you know, your brain just is saying 50 billion things all at once. And so that gets quiet when you go outside. Reduced aggression. Goodness knows we all need that, right? So they found that violence levels in the workplace went down when they were having their employees go out. And they found in hospital patients that were admitted were much happier if they had a view, just a simple view where they could see outside, which actually led to higher healing rates. So imagine just the simple fact of you having a window in your hospital room is getting you out of the hospital faster than a room without. That's pretty startling, right? So here's another book. I can't remember if I recommended this one before, but this is where a lot of the data that I pulled these talk from came from. It's called The Well-Gardened Mind. She is a psychologist in England, and she got interested, kind of like I did, in is there any science out there that shows us what the benefits are of being outside? So this is kind of a gathering of stories and data. It doesn't read like science, it really reads like a story, so I highly recommend it, on what's happening when we go out. I just want to throw out this one study, because I've said a lot of vague things. I haven't given you the data on it. These are all supported by data, but this one was particularly startling. So this Dr. Branas, he's from Columbia University. This is the longest running study that they've ever had, I think. So it started back in '99, and they were looking, this was up in Philly, they were looking at, back then it was the city, all the downtown had left, the businesses had all left, it was just in bad shape. And there were lots of abandoned lots. And they were being taken over by crime and drugs. And so they started experimenting with what would happen if we turned some of these vacant lots into green spaces, either gardens or just, plants, right? So they went from '99 to 2018, so my math, almost 20 years, right? And when they ran the numbers, because they did this every year, they found that crime had gone down 13%. That doesn't sound like a lot, but it really is. But this one really, I thought was pretty striking. Gun violence had gone down by 30%. And people, when they asked them, how do you feel about, what's happening? 60% of them said they felt safer with those green spaces out there. And the depression and mental health problems that they were seeing in that population halved. 50%. That's not using medication, that's not using therapy, that's just investing some money into these vacant lots, okay? So, we hear a lot of talk today about homelessness and crime and, it's too much money to tackle. And there's really some easy things that we can be doing to help address some of this. So this is a term, I just kind of want to throw it out there because I think it's pretty fascinating. It's called the attention restoration theory. And basically all this is saying is the amount of energy that your body utilizes, so it's burning your calories, to pay attention in the city. So you're hearing traffic and horns and people and whatever, that amount of energy versus the amount of energy if we're just outside is way less. So it costs you more calories to think, literally think in the city, in an urban environment, than it does when you're outside. So if your body's already stressed, right, from whatever, just think about what it could do for going out. So in nature, they found out these kids were paying attention more broadly. It wasn't as much effort for them. They were much more relaxed in body and mind. This is a concept I'm sure you've heard of, forest bathing. This is in Japan. This is very common there. People just go out into the forest and they just sit. They're not talking, they're not visiting, they're just sitting and bathing in that beauty. And they've known for a long time that people felt happier, they did better, but they didn't know why, what was happening. So they've been doing some studies, and here's what they found out. I think this is amazing. The smells that people are taking in when they're out in the forest are causing cells in our body that are called, I love this, NK cells, which stands for natural killer cells. So you have natural killer cells in your body, but they hunt down tumors and infections. So these smells are literally making our cancer-fighting chemicals in our body rise. I think I'm all for that, right? So, what nature does for us, we've known a little bit about the physical and mental benefits, but you don't really hear, particularly in public settings, people talking about the ecosystem benefits and what those are worth. So I'm just going to real briefly touch these. So an ecosystem service is something that the ecosystem is providing for us. And basically they just group these. So one is called provisioning. So this is anything that we take from the environment, our food, our water, air, that kind of stuff. Then we've got regulating. So regulating is about, how do ecosystems function in an equitable way. We've got supporting, that's our nutrient cycling, our water cycling, our air cycling, photosynthesis. And then cultural. So cultural is more how we feel when we're out in nature. Okay, so how can you guys as community members, okay? I really was thinking when I was putting this together, it's like, what can they take from this to help them move forward? So I tried to put together some action items. So as a community member, what you can do is advocate for green spaces. That's one of the single best things you can do. Now that would be with your city council, your board members, whoever in the government that you can talk to convince them that these monies are critical monies, not because it's pretty, but because of the physical and mental benefits we're going to get. And then you have to support those tax initiatives, right? Land is not free, obviously, and it's just getting more expensive all the time. So somehow we have to protect those properties. And then a seed library. You know, you see these little book libraries everywhere in people's front yards. A lot of my clients have now, because they've been converted, have little seed libraries. So they make up little seed packets, they put them in there, and people come along and take them and start more as they go. And then, I don't know if you guys have a community tool bank down here, but this is probably one of the best things, I think, because I think a lot of people would like to do things out in their yard, but they don't have the proper tools. So a tool bank is just what it sounds like, a tool bank, where there's shovels and privet pullers, and you just go and check them out, just like you check out a library card, okay? And you take them out and you use them for, 2 days, a week, whatever, and then you take them back so somebody else can use them. So, there's a lot of different ways you could start on something like that, but I would definitely recommend it. So I just want to bring up the topic of play deserts. Believe it or not, it sounds very, let's see. It's definitely not a third world problem, right? A play desert. It's not something somebody else would be worrying about. But here in North America, we are blessed, and there are, believe it or not, some places where there are significant inequalities for people to go out and play, just play. And you can see Georgia has got quite a few, right? And you'll notice that where they are, it's mostly South Georgia, unfortunately. But poor Alabama, right? So there is a new tool out there. So that if you forget about this, Google Trust for Public Land, Park Desert. And there is an app that they've downloaded that will let you see anywhere where these deserts are. So this is Atlanta, and you can see those red areas are all areas where we're losing most of our trees. Okay, so we've talked about community things you can do and how you're benefited. What could we do at work? Well, there's a lot of stuff that we could do at work, and it's going to be different for everybody depending on, obviously, where you're working. But we do know through research that the addition of plants, just a simple house plant, right, will increase your air quality by 87% in just 24 hours. Now that's pretty amazing that your air could be better where you're living just by adding some indoor plants, okay? We know that noise levels are down almost as much as 50% just by adding plants, and then improved water management. So ways that you can do that, well, these guys are not in the right place. Anxiety, fatigue, headaches, all of these things in the workplace went down. That's what it was, with plants. And plus, workers were just more productive. I don't know if you've heard this term. I had not. Presenteeism. Okay, presenteeism is when your employees are there in body, but they're not there, right? They're not really working. And this, I think, has become even more prevalent, right? So they're just mentally checked out. And we do know that is a huge cost for businesses. $250 billion, with a B, billion dollars a year to this presenteeism. So we do know the more you can do for your employees, the better, more productive they're going to be. If it's just putting a house plant in there, why can't we do that? So how are we going to incorporate this into building design? Well, we are sadly behind on this here in North America. These are buildings that are being designed in Japan and China. They're going vertical with these green gardens. Look, imagine if you were a pollinator trying to fly along and find some flowers. Wouldn't you rather fly into this huge tower of plants than into just a steel building? So this is very helpful. Courtyard gardens, of course, we all love to go out in the courtyard and relax. Okay, this is a concept art of a big workplace, and you can see they've built these green gardens in all over the place. Rooftop gardens. You'd be surprised who could have a rooftop garden. It doesn't take much to do a rooftop garden. And they have tons of benefits. They're buffering our rainwater, they're adding value, they're extending our roof life, it's a fire-resistant layer, it's reducing our energy. I mean, we could just list things all day. So what can you do? Well, join a green team if you have one at work. I don't know if they still call them that. I may have just dated myself. But some type of environmental team at work, and then advocate as a corporate policy for some environmentally sound practices. This is not a huge thing that corporations think about, is what are my environmental policies? So the more you can nudge them towards that, the better. This is another great book called The Nature Fix, and we just see that businesses are becoming more and more and more aware of this because our younger people, they're really demanding a good quality workplace. I've been working with an HOA in Atlanta. It's a really old condominium. There's maybe only 50 condos in it. But he was telling me most of their members have lived there for 30 years. And they're unfortunately dying off, right? And young people are coming in to buy those condos. You want to know what their first question is? Can we garden here? And are your plants native? Okay, so a lot of businesses are having to really switch how they think about how they are landscaping. And that's not an easy switch for them, okay? We do know that 2/3 of our humanity are going to be living in cities by 2050. So the more we can do to make our cities more environmentally friendly, the better. Okay, here's a little quiz. This is the average screen time by age, okay? First of all, I can't even believe this number is here, right? 0 to 2 years, almost an hour a day. That is insane, because we do know the brain development, it's really changing how these babies' brains are starting to develop. 2 to 4 years, 2.5 hours, I'm pretty sure this is per day. Yes, it is per day. Okay, I can't imagine doing anything for 2.5 hours as a toddler, right? 5 to 8, 3 hours, 8 to 10, 6 hours. Okay, so I'm gonna be, I won't make you say it out loud, but how many hours are y'all spending? Okay, well, for adults, over 10 hours a day. That's the average. So you know there's some people with 15 and some people with 5.
That includes working.
It's screen time, yeah, but if you think, when I worked, even 15 years ago, I had 0 screen time because we didn't have computers, right? So I can still remember fighting over the one computer in the room, right? Wouldn't want to go back to those days, but I do think there are some things we could do better. So how is that affecting us? Well, we do know a green space. So this is a green space they did in a school courtyard. It's promoting self-control, okay? Again, here's that lowering anxiety. It's improving our working memory. Oh my gosh, if I could get my working memory even 5% better, okay, I'd be thrilled. Our flexibility, cognitively, you know, as we age, it becomes harder and harder for us to change or learn new things. So by going outside and spending time out, that becomes a little easier and just improves our intention. And then again, here's more data showing that urban environments is linked to attention deficits. So this paper blew me away. Residential green space in childhood is associated with lower risk of psychiatric disorders from adolescence into adulthood. So here they looked at children who had some sort of green space, and they did quantify it in the study, but it wasn't anything, wasn't like a humongous park or anything. It was just the ability to go outside. And then looking at how these kids developed in adolescence, 55% less mental diagnoses in kids that had access to outside. Now, as a teacher who worked in Atlanta, urban area, I can tell you that many of our children never get to go outside in a forest, never have that experience of just playing freely out into, in the dirt. It's just not available to many of our kids. So think about if there were half of our mental illnesses we might be able to get rid of. We do know just listening to the sounds. So let's say you can't get outside, you're stuck in all day. What can you do? Well, just putting on some white noise, rain, wind, all these outside nature sounds can make us so much better. So, I like this one. Can it make you nicer? God knows we need that these days, right? So, this was, I thought, a fascinating experiment. They took kids, these are mostly grade school kids, and they showed them either a nature documentary or an architectural landmark video. Okay, that was exciting, right? And then they got them to play this fishing game. It's a fishing game with plastic colored fish. There's rules, but it's very simple, okay? Little kids play this all the time. And what they found was that the students that actually watched the nature documentary, okay, were more likely to cooperate with others, and they were more likely to make choices that sustained this fish population. So instead of decimating the fish, they were more likely to care about that population and work to keep it up, okay? That's pretty amazing. And so they also, here's another study that found people with low social connectedness, so people who may be on the spectrum, who may just not have a good neighborhood cohort to rely on, okay? If those people were able to get outside, okay, they reported higher levels of well-being. So, where would you rather play if you were a kid, right? On this, or something like this, or this, or this, right? The opportunities for play, pretend play, we call that, child psychologists call that free play. So in other words, it's not play with rules where we sit down and say, you go first, you go second. It's what we all did growing up, right? Where we beat each other up with sticks and we just made forts and, you made up the rules as you went along. Kids no longer do that. And what they have found is the way the brain develops without that free play is very different from how their little brains are developing now. Not saying it's a bad thing, I'm just saying it's very different than we've been developing for thousands of years. So, maybe it's something we need to look at. So how, as a homeowner or an apartment owner, whatever, how can you help to deal with this? So I'm just gonna real quickly run through some questions that I get from people a lot, okay? So, first one is, well, my neighbors won't let me, right? And here's what neighbors fear, okay? This is what they think is going to happen, and that's not what we're talking about, right? So now, so I get these questions a lot. How will I know where you live? And I was like, well, you'll know when you get there, right? So they always know my house. It's not quite this bad, but it could be, right? Or, and this is what Eric has sworn, we will never move again because this is what we would need if we had to move all those plants, right? So That's not what we're talking about when we're talking about natives. Here's another one I hear a lot. Natives attract vermin. So this is what they think. Oh, if we put native plants in, we're going to get all these vermin, okay? Which that in itself is a bad word, right? So all plants attract wildlife. All, okay? The trick is, okay, including bees, right? That could sting, or birds that may decorate your car. However, let's put that into perspective, okay? So we have between 7,000 and 8,000 snake bites a year, okay? Average 5 deaths a year. Now that's terrible. We hate for anybody to die, but still 5 is not a lot out of 7,000 to 8,000. I will say out of those people, 28% of them were intoxicated, which is not a surprise to me, okay? Oh, what's that? It's a snake, let's pick it up, right? Versus, okay, in 2012, 791 people died from toasters, okay? So, you know, the fear that plants are going to attract wildlife is really not a legitimate fear, right? So, yes, I can go back to that.
That's just too fast.
You know, this is how my brain works, right? That gives you any insights. So, just to make sure, and I'm sure you guys are all aware with this, this is enemy number 1. In the Atlanta urban area, I'm not sure how bad it is here in this area, but I can guarantee you just from driving around, it is there. English ivy is a killer. It is going to kill your trees. Today, no. Tomorrow, no. In some time, yes, okay? So if you've got English ivy going up your trees are in the process of dying. You just don't know it because they're on a much longer timeline than we are. So the best thing you can do is go out and cut it at the base. Don't worry about it on the tree. It'll die and fall off in a year or so, but just cut it at the base. And then pull as you can, because if you have mosquitoes and you have English ivy, that is why, okay? Those mosquitoes can lay their eggs on those leaves. They're very waxy and they hold the water. And it only takes a drop, okay, for those females to lay their eggs. So pull the ivy. You'll be surprised what comes up. I had a client one time who called me out and I wanted to do her backyard. She wasn't ready for that. She said, oh, I'm not doing anything back there. I haven't been back there in years. I said, well, when you get ready, let me know. So a year later, she called me. She said, well, we've been pulling ivy back there. I think I'm ready. So I went over. I thought it was just going to be a quick one, right? There must have been 300 trilliums up in her yard. Trillium, which is a spring ephemeral that's just, it's like, oh, so one of the best. And I said, did you know these were back here? She said, no, because the ivy's been here. And as they pulled it up, the seed bank just exploded. I found trout lilies, I found orchids, I found trillium, I found all kinds of things. So the seed bed's there, you've just got to give it some time without that ivy there. So, you know, native plants are not going to suffer any more than our non-natives. So this is what people fear, is their plants all getting eaten. So let's just take another little quiz here. I need a drink. If you went into a nursery and you were presented with these 2 plants, which one would you want? Plant 1 or plant 2? Okay, how many of you for 1? Come on, be honest. Come on, 1. I know you're all 1s, okay, or 2s. Right, so this is 2 up close. This was taken at my nursery, okay, last fall. And most people that would walk into a plant nursery would see that, would think, oh, that's a disease plant. I'm not staying away from that we need to leave, right? However, I will tell you, that was all done by the Luna moth, which turns into this absolutely gorgeous moth, okay? So This is pipevine. And people see these and think they're, oh, hideous little things, right? But these guys turn into one of our most beautiful butterflies, the pipevine swallowtail. So I was just recently updating our online website for the nursery, and it used to be I had to go research every plant to find out, does anybody use it? Is it a host plant for anybody? And that would take me hours for just one plant. Today with AI, I will tell you, it does have its uses. I would just type in, is blank blank a host plant? Every single species, I was even surprised by this, I put in was a host plant. If it is from North America, it is serving somebody, okay? So we want to let our plants just be their imperfect, magnificent selves, just like we want to be, our magnificent, imperfect selves. A lot of people would see that and they'd be like, oh, that's terrible. I see that and I get really excited because who did that? Yes, our leaf cutters. This is one of our 4,000 plus native bee species. Okay, and the female comes and she cuts. That is a perfect circle too. If you did whatever's that, diameter, radius, it would be perfect. And she clips that little circle and she takes it back and she lines her nest with it. And then she puts some food in, she lays an egg, she caps it, and then she goes out and does another one. So all of those stems you guys like to deadhead and cut, those are all where her eggs are, which is why we leave all of that standing as long as we possibly can in the spring. I'm just now starting to cut my beds back, okay? But we don't throw it away, we just set it aside. So what I'm proposing is a real paradigm shift, and for some people it's harder than others. I was giving this talk one time up in North Atlanta. It was at a country club, so that gives you an idea of who I was speaking to. Wonderful people, right? And I was at about this point in my talk, and this guy jumped up out of nowhere and said, do you mean to tell me I have been spending thousands of dollars every year keeping my plants from being eaten, and you want me to just let them eat it? And I said, yes, that is exactly what I mean. I want you to let them eat it because that's why they are there, right? So I found this sign. I think it's wonderful. I just found this on Facebook. If something is not eating your plants, then your garden is not part of the ecosystem, okay? That is a real shift in thinking for us as gardeners because we have spent so much time and energy and money keeping things from eating our plants, haven't we, right? Okay, so it's a big shift. So my class shouted at me. I went back, I have a really good friend who's an artist, and I said, could you help me draw something that illustrates this concept? And this is what she came up with. Our yards are a grocery store, okay? And what you put in that yard is providing all of the necessary food for all of our living organisms, okay? So I don't know if you caught it, but in my bio, she said the first thing I was an ornithologist, which is birds. I studied birds for almost 40 years. I've banded them, I've caught them, I've done everything you can think of. So for me, this all comes down to, do we want birds in our world or not? Okay? We have lost almost 3 billion birds just since the 70s. Okay? That's half of my lifetime, right? So in your lifetimes. And we believe they're going to be extinct maybe in another 50. If we don't make changes, okay? Why? Well, 96% of our North American birds feed their babies caterpillars. Caterpillars, okay? Now, everybody's seen bluebirds stuffing caterpillars in their mouths. So 310 species that live here in North America, that is the only thing they feed their babies in the summer. Okay? That's it, just caterpillars. So why? Why caterpillars? Well, basically, it's a big protein sausage, right? Okay? It's lots and lots of protein. And would you rather have a protein sausage or would you rather have a beetle? Okay? That would be hard to stuff down your baby's throat, right? So that's why they love these soft little caterpillars. So here's our little chickadee, our Carolina chickadee, one of my favorite little birds, named because they say their name, chickadee, dee, 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 you'll hear them. Okay, they live in a little social group, up to 30 individuals. This is a really good mama. Look at all those babies. She's got 8 babies in those nests, okay? So they're building nests starting now. She'll probably lay eggs maybe April, beginning of April. And she may do that 4 times in the year, okay? Have 4 different nests. So how many caterpillars do you think it would take to get this one nest just from 0 to 14 days out of the nest? Make a guess. 1,000? Okay. Well, believe it or not, somebody counted this. I would not have wanted to be that graduate student. Anywhere from 6,000 to 9,000 caterpillars. Now, that's just one nest for one chickadee. Let's say she does that 4 times. That's 36,000 caterpillars just for that one chickadee. Is she the only chickadee in your yard? No. Is she the only bird species in your yard? No. So think about how many caterpillars your yard has got to produce if you want birds. And people wonder why we've lost almost 3 billion birds. It's because we are, and if I don't have that slide in here, but if you look at New York Times and Google insect apocalypse, we are there. They do think we are at our next global extinction with insects. I mean, you guys remember driving and you had to clean your windshield? When's the last time you had to do that? It's been a long time because the insects are not there anymore, okay? So going back is these plants that we have determine what we call carrying capacity. That's a really scientific term, but I think it's critical for what we're talking about. So all that means is how many individuals can live in a place sustainably based on the food in that area and the water and the air in that area, okay? Just like this picture, you get too many, they can't make it, right? So this 3 is the carrying capacity. That's how many fish you can have in that space, okay? So that carrying capacity is determined by what kind of plants you have. So what do we need to think about in our yards? Well, ground cover is critical. This is where I think where we fall short the most, excuse me, as gardeners, is we forget about this bottom layer. Because we like to plant shrub, mulch, maybe some perennials surrounded by mulch, okay? Is that how plants grow? No, okay? They grow all next to each other, all up in each other's businesses, okay? Their roots are supposed to be competing underground for structure and support, okay? So by putting these layers in, you're helping, and you're eliminating the use for an artificial product, which is mulch. Did you know that mulch wasn't even sold before the 70s? It was, if you'd gone into Home Depot in 1970 and asked for a bag of mulch, they would have looked at you like you were crazy. Do you know that mulch came about because of the Clean Air Act? And the Clean Air Act said that these companies could no longer burn their wood waste. And so like any good company, what did they say? Oh, we'll sell it to them, right? And that's what they did. And now we spend, God knows, tons of money on mulch. when it's an unnecessary product. So what's a soft landing? So if you look at our trees out there, they're usually completely bare underneath them. And we're trying to get people to create these soft landings. So what that means is, so let's just take an oak tree. An oak tree supports, let's see if I can get the number right, 432 species reproduce on an oak tree, okay? Most of the time they're up in the leaves, but as they go through their life cycle, many of them fall to the ground. If we have raked or blown away all the leaves, then they're falling on hard substances and mostly dying. If we're raking away the leaves under, we're raking away all those living things, okay? Because many of them will finish their life cycle in that leaf litter. So here's what I'm advocating. Let's just blow our leaves and make a nice, neat little pile, okay? This way they break down, they turn into soil. You're not spending money on pine straw, which is not great because it's acidic, right, as it breaks down. Now, you're like, well, how'd they get it so neat? Well, what you don't see is this little fencing just around the edges, okay? That's only 6 inches. You get that at Home Depot, right? And it's invisible, see? So it's just keeping those leaves there. So we always say leaves don't want to leave home. So if you can keep your leaves on your property, the better it will be, okay? I think I mentioned this already. We have 4,000 species of native bees, okay? Honeybees are not native. So what they need is just a little bit of bare soil, okay? So somewhere, if you've got some nice sandy or clay soil, just scratch the mulch away. And you may one year find all these little holes in there, and those are all going to be from our ground nesting native bees. They're a lot of fun to watch. Okay, so I am proposing a new bumper sticker, okay? And become a native plant advocate. So we're going to combat climate change. We are going to fight the insect apocalypse. We are going to save wildlife, fight mental illness, combat obesity, promote physical wellness. I think this would probably take up the whole car, right? And fight crime. So just think of all these amazing things that we can address at one time just by thinking carefully about our plant choices at home. So, I did it almost perfectly. So I did tell you I was going to announce, this is our nursery. We are growing, what did I say, Eric? Oh, almost 250 different species. Most all of them are from seeds that we sourced here in Georgia. Some of you very kindly have helped us with those seeds. And we really are specializing in shady plants, ground covers, grasses, sedges, and even some of these spring ephemerals that you can't find. So these are we do have pop-up plant sales. Right now, I have a property in Stockbridge that I'm growing all the sunny stuff. My partner's in Tucker. She has 2 acres. She's growing all the shady stuff and the seeds. You can order online and we'll pull it, and you can pick it up on Saturdays from either location. But we will be at these sales, so we'll be at the Carroll County, would probably be the best space for you guys to find us. But we would love to have y'all, we bring people to the nursery by appointment, so just let us know if you want to come out. So questions, I know I yammered on a lot. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I have several acres of forest, predominantly water oak. Nothing grows under it. It's the Sahara Desert. What can I put under the native that will actually survive that dry shade?
So he's asking, but he's got several acres of water oak that is bare underneath, and he was wanting to know what he can put in there for dry shade. So I would ask, has the area been sprayed?
Never.
Never been sprayed, okay. Sedges would be the first thing I would be putting in there. Georgia has 300 something plus species native of sedges. If you're not familiar with the sedge, make them your new best friend. They look just like monkey grass, okay? And they are the native alternative to monkey grass. And they are a host plant for insects. They provide seeds for birds in the winter. And they have these beautiful forms. It just depends on, I would have to look at the soil type. So that's where I would tell you to start. But if you'll email me, I can probably give you a more specific list. Okay, anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
What about aphids and Japanese beetles?
So Japanese beetles, obviously not from here, right? Aphids are a normal part of the garden. And what has happened is that because we have not gardened in very ecologically sound ways, all of our normal predators are gone. So the best defense is a good offense, which is to increase your plantings and your diversity of plantings. So by adding in more species, you're going to bring in all these little predators that are going to eat all those aphids for us. The Japanese beetles, they're a little bit tougher, but honestly, I have not had a serious issue with them really since we've started expanding our plantings, because we just have so many birds, they just really don't stand a chance to do damage. They'll eat something, but they're not going to damage it. And that's another great thing about native plants. You will see trees, like right now, all the white that you're seeing. Do y'all know what that is? That's the invasive Bradford pear, okay? If you see it, cut it down, please. Because if you were really paying attention while you're driving right now, it is destroying our forests. It's just taking over. That wasn't the point I was going to make, though. What was I saying right before that? Yeah, plant more species. I lost it. I'll get it back. Anybody else? We got time for at least one more, if anybody has one. Yes, sir.
Where is your nursery at?
So our mailing address is Stockbridge. It's not really Stockbridge. It's just below Conyers by Panola Mountain. So we are right off of 155 where Panola Mountain is. Just a little south of that. So it's about 45 minutes back roads from here to my house.
And your online address?
We are online, Wild Roots. If you just Google Wild Roots Native Nursery, you'll find the website. Okay? So I'll stick around. If anybody has questions, feel free to come up and just visit, say hello, thank you. I really appreciate your attention. I may have just turned it off.
Thank you so much, Tricia. I know I'm not the only one that found all of that fascinating. We're going to draw for door prizes now. I didn't go over it earlier, but